Welcome to Fully Booked, the bookish podcast where I'll chat about all things book and reading related. Whether you're a new or a pro reader, there's something for everyone to learn. I'm here to help you on your reading journey and find that next great read that will keep you fully booked. Hello, readers, and welcome to episode 68 of Fully Booked. I'm your host, Natalie, and today's episode is going to be my 2026 mid-year wrap-up. And I'm going to very quickly run through my current read so we can dive into the wrap-up. And I am currently still in the middle of Rebel Witch by Kristen Ciccarelli. This is the final book in the Crimson Moth duology. Obviously, I just read Heartless Hunter last month, so I really just want to continue on and finish this duology. I'm sad to report that I just don't have too much to say to you guys, even though I'm already more than 2/3 of the way through. I think I just felt like I was expecting to find out a lot more detail about the world, which I feel like we didn't really get. The plot is definitely advancing, but I don't know. There's something about this book that is not giving me as much as Heartless Hunter did. I think this is still really good romantasy duology overall, but let's see what I have to say once I actually finish this book. And without further ado, since I have so much to share with you guys about my reading journey this year, let's get into the mid-year wrap-up. So I thought it'd be fun to go through my stats so far for the year, and just an FYI, most of the stats that I get are from my Fable reading stats, so I'll try to remember to put up some of the graphics as I go along, just for something a little more visual for those of you watching right now. Another FYI, if you see my eyes moving around as I'm going through all of this, it's because all of my stats and everything that I wrote down for today's episode is up on my laptop right beside me, so I'm just going to be checking my notes as I go through. So far in 2026, I have read an average of 9 books a month, which pretty much checks out because I think I read 11 books back in February, if I'm not mistaken, and I've had at least 3 months in a row of reading 9 books each. And my average overall star rating has been 3.7 stars, which apparently is exactly the same as last year. And I know this is a stat that might not matter to a lot of you as readers, but it's actually one that I kind of keep my eye on because I guess a small sub-goal of mine has been to increase my average overall star rating each year because I really want to hit the 4-star mark. I feel like something about that would just feel really good and kind of validate that I'm actually picking up books that I'm genuinely enjoying, genuinely would recommend to so many people. I don't think I've actually talked about on the podcast how my star ratings work and what they actually mean to me, because for me 3 stars is pretty much just an average okay book, probably a fun time, enjoyable while I read it, but it's not something that's going to stick in my memory. I might recommend it depending on the book and if I have a good understanding of who the book was probably written for and the types of readers that would enjoy that book. But otherwise, 3 stars is really just fun, but not memorable. 4 stars is really where the good stuff starts happening for me. Usually, my auto-buy authors tend to fall within the 4-star range. A lot of my favorite romance authors tend to sit in that range. These are books that I just truly enjoy. Again, truly I'm going to recommend to a lot of people. And if I haven't been clear enough in some of my other episodes, quality over quantity has pretty much been the motto for the last year of my reading journey. And so yeah, that's something I just want to continue and bring into, I guess, each of these reading goals that I have. Now, if any of you are following me on my Goodreads or Fable, which by the way, I always leave those linked below if you do want to go follow me, I have already hit my yearly reading goal for this year, which was 52 books. I actually hit this goal just as of yesterday. I finished a book yesterday that brought me to my goal. This is probably partly a bad thing given what I just said about wanting to read more quality books and not necessarily the quantity. But I feel like it's okay because we still have a lot of the year left, which means it just gives me a lot more freedom and space to read whatever I want or to even slow down because like I've said in the last probably maybe a couple episodes now or wrap-ups, I've been pretty focused on reading each of my TBRs, if you guys hadn't noticed. But I feel like summer is a time that I intentionally want to slow down a bit and maybe not set as much structure in my reading for that season. Obviously, I already made my summer TBR, so I will probably still try to stick to that and get to those books. But other than that, I'm just gonna let myself be really free to pick out whatever I want. So let's see how much further I get in the rest of 2026. And then for my top 5 most read genres, we have romance, YA, literary fiction, thrillers, and historical fiction, which is pretty similar again to last year, except that I believe fantasy was in my top 5 last year. This should be no surprise to all of you, but romance is the top genre of mine with 24 books read. And then the rest of the books are all pretty similar amounts, where I've read 7 YA books, 7 literary fiction books, 7 thrillers, and I've read 6 historical fiction books. One thing I have to note here is that I'm not sure how Fable categorizes their books by genre, if they only do it by one specific genre, which I feel like can be misleading because I feel like within this stat, there's probably a mix because I definitely know that some of the romance books I read were also YA books, and likewise, I feel like some of the historical or literary fiction that I read could also be classified as romance. I feel like I always like Goodreads better, where users can add tags to different books, so you can add so many different tags to one book, and you can tag every single genre that that book could be classified or associated with. And so, yeah, I think I'd have to check because I'm thinking that Fable might only do it by like one specific genre, which again, I feel like is a little bit misleading when it comes to this stat, but it is what it is, I guess. Continuing on, let's go through the personal goals and challenges that I set for myself at the beginning of this year. And if you guys haven't watched that episode, I did make a 26 for 2026 and reading goals episode. Actually, I think it might have been the end of December, technically. So if you want to go watch that, where I initially talked about some of these goals and challenges that I set for myself, then you can do that. So pulling up all the goals that I set, I have stuck to about half of these, I would say. Obviously, I just told you guys I've already met my yearly reading goal. I've definitely been reading more memoirs that I've liked, and I will be talking about a couple of those of you guys later in this episode. I think the ones I'm going to highlight are the ones that I haven't exactly been following, which would be the 3 strikes rule, unhauling physical books, and doing cozy reading days. So honestly, I haven't had to use the 3 strikes rule because I haven't been picking books that have been on previous TBRs. I feel like I get in the habit and keep picking up newer releases or books that are somewhat newer released, maybe from last year that I didn't get to. It's a good and bad thing, I guess, again, where, yeah, I haven't had to use this rule, but at the same time, it kind of keeps putting books way on the back burner, again, that I'm just not getting to. So I guess we'll see if we need to utilize this rule later in the year or not. And then unhauling physical books, I've definitely been doing a good job in general. I would say I've been unhauling a lot more regularly compared to last year. And I think I've also been getting better at figuring out which books I want to keep as soon as I have finished them, because I feel like I've definitely had a habit of finishing books in the past and then holding on to them for a while just because I want to keep them on my shelf still, but then I didn't actually enjoy them, and I know I'm never gonna reread them or anything like that ever again. Just an FYI, I'm not really a book collector, if you guys haven't been able to tell already. I tend to only keep books that I genuinely love, so like my 5-star reads, books that I would reread time and time again. I'm not really a person to just simply collect books just for the sake of building up a library. And I actually prefer to keep it that way anyways. I kind of like having the books that are just the best of the best on my shelf. So with unhauling physical books, again, doing well in general, but I would say I have not gotten rid of a lot of books that have been there for 2+ years because I genuinely still want to get to some of those books that have been on my shelf for a while. I think there are a couple books that I recently got rid of that were on my shelf for a while, but the rest of them I pretty much still want to get to, which I know probably sounds bad because I'm saying I want to get to them, but then we're not actually getting to them. So hopefully we can try to be better at getting to a couple more physical books. If you guys have also been watching my TBR Takedown short series, I think one of the rules I made for that was also about unhauling, which was to unhaul every quarter, so I have been sticking to that. So yeah, overall, unhauling is going well. We just need to actually get to what we need to get to. And then cozy reading days has honestly not been happening. I would say I have a lot of cozy reading half days where in general, Saturday mornings tend to be my most time of relaxation. It's usually the time where I don't plan anything. I try not to overcommit and book myself to too many social gatherings or obligations, and usually just take it slow, spend some time reading. But other than that, I just never have a full day to commit to reading, and it's probably also because, again, it's summer right now. You guys know I live in Canada. I am trying to optimize time outside, and usually that time is also spent with friends or family. I think what I need to do with this goal is just reframe it, because I think when I initially made it, I pretty much was thinking about cozy reading, staying home all day kind of vibe. Whereas I could just make it a day where I get a lot more reading done in general. Because besides Saturday morning, I would say most of my reading just gets done mornings and evenings on the weekday. But I think if I reframe it where I just try to get extra reading in, that would be great. Because, for example, I love reading outside at the park. That's one of my favorite spring summer activities. So since we have a couple months of summer left, definitely will try to continue doing that. And I also love going for walks. I'm not really doing the 10,000 steps a day rule or challenge like some people do, but I have been trying to hit 5 to 6K steps a day at least, which honestly is still not going well. But yeah, just to at least get myself moving a little bit, because I do have some days where I am pretty much just sitting on my butt all day. So yeah, I try to go for at least a 15 to 20 minute walk Monday to Friday. And honestly, the best thing to listen to when I go for walks is my audiobooks. You guys know I'm an audiobook lover. Whether I'm cleaning or walking, I'm always going to want to throw an audiobook on. So yeah, I think hopefully if I can just get some more walks in, then that'll just be another way to get in some reading time and also break up the day if it is a Saturday or whatever day it is. Because I do find the problem with having cozy reading days is that I do get a little bit antsy after a while. I find that I can only sit and read for about half the day before I start getting bored and I feel the need to get up and do something. So again, hopefully walking will just help me be able to reach a bunch of goals at the same time. Before we move on to the last major section of this wrap up, I do want to note that I did have some digital journal spreads I wanted to share with you guys. Again, this is something that I made at the start of the year that was, I'm going to be honest, a little more for me personally to have a personal reading adjacent project to work on, but I am kind of proud of it and it's something I wanted to show you guys. But unfortunately, I've been slacking on updating each of the journal spreads, and so I have a couple more things I need to add into the pages, so I'm not going to go through those in today's episode, but since it's a digital journal, I'll probably make a carousel post at some point to share with you guys, probably by either the end of this month or the very beginning of next month, so you guys can see, maybe get some inspo for yourselves as well if digital journaling is something you like to do or want to do as well. Now, for the fun part of today's wrap up, we're going to get into my 2026 highlights. I wrote down a couple prompts, and the first one I have is favorite book so far. Now, you guys are going to find this out about me. I am the worst when it comes to picking favorites. If you ask me just to pick one, I can never do that. So, of course, I wrote down two for this one. So, the first one, which I'm going to call a universal fan favorite, is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I think this is an obvious fan favorite for so many reasons. Everyone and their mom has been reading this book, watching the movie, which again, I did get to watch the movie in theaters this year, which was super fun. I feel like I don't have enough words to describe how incredible this book is, the journey that you go on, the things, especially that Rylan and Rocky do for each other, are just so beautiful and touching, which is something you would just not expect from a hard sci-fi novel. And it's truly one of those stories that anyone can get into, which is interesting because sci-fi is usually not the easiest genre for people to get into. It's not even one that I usually gravitate towards. I think this is the first sci-fi I picked up in ages. This is a book that you can definitely go into blind. That would be my suggestion. And I'm not even going to go through a lot of the summaries for all the books I'm going to talk about, because I talked about so many of these books in other episodes, wrap-ups, so you guys can just go back and watch some of those if you want to hear, or go look up for yourselves if you want to know what some of these books are about. But yeah, this book is just so wonderful. Again, heart, humor, the way he's able to describe the human experience and emotions, just universally, that is going to connect with everyone. Just simply, again, amaze, amaze, amaze. Now, if you want my personal fan favorite read, this is also not going to be a surprise to most of you. It's going to be Pachinko by Minjin Lee. This book is probably what I would call a soul book. I don't know if that's a term that all of you guys are familiar with or use. I feel like basically when you feel just such a tie and a bond with an author or a certain book that you can't even fully put into words, but you're just so deeply connected, the story resonates with you. For me, that would be this book. And I'm going to put it out there, whether you like historical fiction or not, whether you're interested in this particular history or period of time and geographic location or not, I feel like this is a book that everyone needs to read. It's just such an epic, decade-spanning story, and I just realized how much I love historical fiction. I would say that 2026 has been the year of falling back in love with historical fiction for me. Because I actually used to love historical fiction a lot as a kid. I don't know if it's because my parents just wanted me to learn and understand a lot of history and different periods of time, things that have happened in the world. But it really did just grow my love for, I guess, history and also historical fiction. And it's something I definitely lost as an adult for a bit. I'm not really sure why, but falling back in love with it has just been the most amazing journey, and I hope I can pick up a lot more. I also want to continue deep diving into Korean historical fiction specifically, and this has just opened a whole new world of reading for me, truly. I do want to add though, I did start watching the TV show for this, which if you don't know, there are 2 seasons of an Apple TV show for this book. I'm going to be honest, so far, I'm not really loving the TV show. And it's probably because I love this book and the way the story was told so much. The next one I wrote down is favorite non-fic so far. And again, I picked 2 for this one, you guys. I know I have a problem. So the first one I want to talk about is Educated by Tara Westover. I don't know what it was about this story that was so compelling, so unputdownable, for lack of a better word. I think it's partly because I also read this book on audio, and Julia Whelan narrates this, and I don't know what it is about that woman's voice. It just made the story even more compelling and engaging to read. What was distinct about this memoir was the way that she was able to tell her story and her writing style. It just felt like I was actually reading a story with actual narrative being woven throughout the whole thing. I feel like what ends up happening with a lot of memoirs that are written by the person themselves is that a lot of people are not actually great writers, and so they tend to tell stories in a way that just meanders and doesn't work for my brain particularly, but just the way she wrote this felt like an actual story, but it was also about actual person and people. And so that was just truly well done and well crafted. And then the second one I want to talk about is a little bit different, which is Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus by Nabil Qureshi. This is his best-selling memoir, where if you don't know, he was born and raised in a Muslim family and ended up converting to Christianity later on in his life, and also went on to do ministry. And this book definitely stood out to me for a different reason, in that I still do not know a lot about other religions, Islam in particular, and so I definitely learned a lot reading this memoir, even just some of the personal and cultural factors of being raised up in a Muslim family. I really enjoyed just, again, getting to learn something different in a memoir, because that's not always something that happens for me. For the biggest disappointment, I did pick Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I think the reason this one was the biggest disappointment is because I truly, truly enjoyed the story life of AJ Thickery when I picked that one up, which was late last year. So I was really excited to get into another book of hers, but this one just felt so different, where AJ Thickery was a beautiful, heartwarming story of second chances. This one just did not have the same feeling at all, even in terms of the writing style. This book was written very differently. There were some interesting language choices in this one. It kind of almost reminded me of The Ministry of Time, if I had to compare this. And I don't know, there's something about the way the story played out in this book that was not a very enjoyable journey as a reader. I think the fact, too, that I did not like any of the characters we were following also did not help things. It's interesting because there were a lot of interesting points and narratives that were woven throughout this story, so I could definitely see certain readers enjoying this. Also, if you like the video game aspect, then you would probably enjoy this book more. But again, this was just one of those books that did not end up doing it for me, unfortunately, at the end of the day. Moving on to something more positive, I have the biggest surprise read, which for me was The Good Part by Sophie Cousins. And this one was especially surprising because I only rated This Time Next Year around a 3 star. I didn't really love that book. I didn't really know what to expect picking up this book by her, but I had heard some good reviews by some booktubers, people that I follow online, so I decided to give it a chance, and I just love this story so much. If you love literary fiction with a magical realism concept, then you will definitely enjoy this. Definitely for fans of Ashley Paulson. This book just felt so reminiscent of movies like Big and 13 Going on 30, which the author did specifically write about in her notes. And there was something about the feel of this book that, again, probably because it had those references and nods to those movies, just had this nostalgic feel that just brought me back to the good part of era of movies where I just love 90s and 2000s rom-coms and movies in general. That era of movies is just so amazing. And unfortunately, I just feel like we're getting a lot of what is being called rom-com slop nowadays. And it's just making me really sad. And again, it just makes me want to go back to these good old days of era of movies because I just love them so much. And I really can't wait to pick up another book by Sophie Cousins now because I think a couple of her other books might have some of those movie influences. So I really can't wait now. And we're actually continuing on a similar vein for this next prompt, which is favorite/prettiest cover so far. And for this one, I did pick First Time Caller by B.K. Borson. I've actually read this one and Now Back to You this year, which the second one actually only released this year. Actually, I'm sorry to those of you listening because you can't see right now, but if you go and look up these covers for this whole series in general, they are just all simply stunning. I also love the cover for And Now Back to You. We also have the cover released already for the last book in this series, which is Longtime Listener. That one I also think is stunning. I love the kind of pinky purple going on with that one. But if I really have to pick, I just really love this cover for First Time Caller. It's so cute. The color palette was just perfect for Valentine's Day. I think this book was released around Valentine's Day, if I'm not mistaken. Also, Aiden Valentine is the name of our MMC. So everything just works so perfectly with this cover for this book. And again, just the most wonderful nostalgic vibes. Because if you don't know, this series are basically all based on Nora Ephron's rom-com suite or trio, which is When Harry Met Sally, Sleepless in Seattle, and You've Got Mail. And I just love the nods that she's given to each of those movies, the references that she puts in, while also making these original characters and stories stand out on their own as well. I think so far all these stories have taken place around the wintertime as well, and I found them perfectly cozy reads for that season. So again, if you're craving nostalgia and not rom-com slop, then definitely pick at least one of these books up. For new favorite author, this is interesting because this author actually isn't in my more favored genres, but I did end up picking Alice Feeney for this prompt. I've definitely been going through an Alice Feeney phase. If you guys haven't noticed how many of her books that I have already picked up this year, which is crazy because I'd only read Rock, Paper, Scissors prior to this year, and that was ages ago, back at the start of my reading journey. I've just honestly been having the best time with her thrillers. It's always cool to discover different thriller authors because last year I pretty much went through a Riley Sager phase. I've still been going through some of his backlist as well, but it's just been nice to find a new favorite thriller author, another one that I know I can just go back to and continue exploring their novels. And I really do like her writing style for a thriller author because I do find that some thrillers I've picked up in the past have not been the most well written. You're typically just there for a really crazy plot and a good time. But I do think she is really good at weaving specific elements or narratives throughout her thrillers, as well as her setting descriptions are always so bleak and dark, and she really just sets the tone for the whole story and the character backgrounds. That's something I just really enjoy, something a bit different for a thriller author. So if you're also looking for another thriller author to get into, I would recommend her. And I know so many people have recommended Rock, Paper, Scissors by her, but I would actually recommend, having now read a bunch of her backlist novels, I would recommend Beautiful Ugly or My Husband's Wife, which are two of her newer works, just because the writing style was just really, really good in both of those compared to some of her previous novels. Continuing to talk about authors, for my best new to you author, for this one, I had to put June Her, which, by the way, I did do an interview with her on the pod last month. So if you guys haven't watched that yet, you should go check that out. That was such a wonderful opportunity and conversation that I got to have with her on not only her writing career, but also more on Behind Five Willows, which I just absolutely adored this story. I think it's almost a disservice to only talk about this book as a PNP inspired romance, because this book is just so much more. I feel like she was able to delve into so many elements of the history of this time period, of reader censorship and bans, and even just censorship of females in general in this Joseon Dynasty kingdom. There are so many elements to be enjoyed, but I feel like this book was also very easy to get into. I think in general, most of her books are classified as YA, although I would say this one kind of starts to trickle into the new adult category just because of the age of the characters. But yeah, for that reason, her books are very easy to get into, but there's so much to unpack and enjoy as well once you do get into them. I think she's just very talented for, again, making all these elements and history just come to life. And I'm really excited to continue her backlist because I do already own A Crane Among Wolves by her, which I'm hoping to pick up either in the upcoming fall or winter, because I know the story is definitely on the heavier side. It is very different from Behind Five Willows, where this one is more of a story of political intrigue. There's more drama, mystery, violence even. So very, very different feel, which I think would be better for the fall and winter season. But regardless of when I pick it up, I think I'm going to enjoy this to continue my deep dive into Korean history and also into the rest of June Her's backlist. Now, these last two sections are all going to be books that I haven't read yet, so I'm going to try to speed run through these a bit because I feel like I've been talking forever at this rate. So the first section is going to be anticipated releases for the rest of 2026. And the first one I have written down is The Unknown by Riley Sager, which is going to be his latest thriller release. All I will tell you guys is that it seems to be more horror-leaning, which he tends to vary his stories in terms of horror leaning or psychological thriller leaning, so I'm curious to get into this one. And it is one that I want to try to get to within the month of release. And then jumping around a little bit, because I did not write these down in order, I have A Married Little Christmas by Abby Jimenez, which is going to be a Christmas novella. I think it's going to be 3 different stories, if I'm not mistaken. And we always love a good little Christmas novella to end off the year, something easy to read through. So really hope I will get to that one in the Christmas season. Also have Julie Olivia's newest upcoming release, which is Love Felt Like This. I forget what this one's about, if I'm going to be honest, but it looks like it's another cozy fall-time romance, similar to her other one, which I still haven't read yet. And I'm going to be honest, I doubt I'll get to this one because I do want to read If It Makes You Happy first, but this will definitely be on my radar for another fall in the future, I guess. And then Min Jin Lee is finally releasing a new novel, which is crazy because it's been almost a decade since the release of Pachinko, and that is American Hagwon, which is more of a contemporary story that follows a family that immigrates to America in the late 90s. So I guess it's technically historical fiction, but it's a more recent time period, so hence contemporary. And then actually following on a similar vein, I also wrote down Taipei Story by R.F. Kuang, which is funny because I'm really not an R.F. Kuang fan yet. I've only read Yellowface so far by her, and it's probably because she still mainly writes fantasy, I would say. But her newest release is, funnily enough, going to be another contemporary fiction story, and I believe we follow our FMC as she goes back to Taipei for the summer. And she goes back for a language program and also to visit her family members there. Something happens while she's there. I, again, don't really remember all the details of all these stories. And she has to come to terms and grapple with a lot of things in terms of just her race, her identity, her upbringing, since she is a Chinese American, born and raised. Again, these are all elements and narratives that I love exploring, these types of stories. So this is one I actually can't wait to get to. I don't know if I'll get to it right away, but I will definitely try to get to this one at some point. For books I need to read by the end of 2026, I'm already looking at this list and going to tell you guys that there is no way I'm going to read all these, but I guess we're going to try the best that we can. So I have The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. Not a surprise because I had this one and Mere Christianity on my 26 for 2026. In fact, the first 3 books I have written down are on my 26 for 2026. So these are probably the highest priority to get to if I can get to them within this year. The Screwtape Letters is very different though from Mere Christianity, where it's not exactly Christian nonfiction. It's kind of Christian allegorical satire. Likewise, the title says it's written in some sort of letter form, so that should be interesting to get into. And then next I have The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This is just one that's been sitting on my physical TBR for a little too long at this point, and I really should get to it. And then likewise, I also have Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, which was also on my fall 2024 TBR, and I still haven't gone to this. And I feel like Gothic classics just feels really fitting to get to in the fall. And then these next couple books, I have Feel of Golden by Alan Levi written down. This is one that I've been seeing circulate online, not only in general, but also among a lot of Christian booktubers. I believe it has some Christian themes, allegory. I think the main character that we follow in this book is a Christian. I don't even know entirely what this book is about. I just know that, again, it has some Christian themes, and the booktubers I do follow have really been enjoying this book, so I would really like to get to it if I could. For another book that I think I'm going to enjoy, I have No Matter What by Cara Bastone. I've read 2 of her romances now, and everyone has been giving amazing reviews about No Matter What. It also has some of my favorite romance tropes, where this is a second chance marriage. And you guys know, I love second chance. I also love second chance marriage romance, where the connection and the history, everything is just already established. You're not guessing at their chemistry or anything because it's already there. And so, yeah, I'm really hoping she did a good job with this type of story. People have been saying that it's even better than her previous 2 romances, so I'm really hoping that ends up being the case. I also have The Awe of God by John Bevere written down. This one in particular I found after watching Alyssa Marie's channel. She is another Christian booktuber that I actually just started following this year. And this is a book that she's continually talked about in like her Christian book rec videos. And it just sounds really good because I think having awe and reverence for God is something that I've wanted to explore and cultivate more in my personal faith life. And so I'm curious what he has to say in this book about that. Last but not least, I have Writers and Lovers by Lily King. Looking at this list, this is the one that I feel like I'm least likely to get to, but I think I just wrote it down to keep it on my radar because so many people have been raving and reading Heart the Lover this year in particular. And there's definitely varying opinion on whether you're supposed to read Writers and Lovers before Heart the Lover or vice versa, because I think Heart the Lover is supposed to be kind of a prequel, interconnected standalone to Writers and Lovers. So it depends on how you like to read, because sometimes for prequels, it's better to read the original story first, and then you go back and get the background or the lore on, again, the story, the characters. But if you like to go within chronological order within the fictional world, or if you just don't care, then you could just pick apart the lover. Some of the people that I follow online have been saying to start with Writers and Lovers, so that's the main reason why this one is on my radar first, and I'm going to try and read this one before going to Heart the Lover. So hopefully that ends up being the right choice. We'll see by the time I get to pick it up. And with that now brings my 2026 mid-year wrap-up to a close. Hope you guys enjoyed hearing about all the different books that I've read so far and some of the books that I still have ahead of me. I'd love to hear from each one of you via the comments or my social media. What book has been your favorite so far in 2026? As always, rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening or watching. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you have not already. Not to say too much for now, but you're definitely going to want to be subscribed on YouTube and be watching more of these episodes and content, because there are definitely some changes coming to Fully Booked, things that I'm looking ahead to coming down the pipeline. If you want to keep up with everything, then YouTube is going to be the best place. And I will explain everything when the time comes, by the way. With all that being said, I hope you're all having a wonderful day. Hope your reading year has been going well so far, and I will see you all in the next episode. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you were able to take away something, and be sure to follow the podcast for more bookish content. Until next time, stay fully booked, and I'll talk to you soon.